Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight in game as well. Now in these videos I like to use your suggestions for monsters that you'd like to see, and I collect every single one of your suggestions no matter what, and then I let my patrons over on Patreon vote for which ones of your suggestions that they would like to see in what particular order. So, if while you're watching this, you think of a monster that you'd really like to see a video about, you'd like to see my illustration of, my version of as an artist, or you just want to hear about the lore and mythology and origins and stuff of that creature, make sure to leave a comment down below so that I can add it to my to-draw list. Or if you want to head over to Patreon and get involved in the voting process and have more control over the types of videos that you see from me, then I'll make sure to leave a link to that in my description box, just down there. Now today's suggestion is a really weird one because it's not a monster that I would initially think of as hugely popular, but by far and away, aside from just wanting to see something that I've homebrewed, this is a creature which has been so consistently requested that I'm so glad that my patrons have picked this guy. Honestly, scrolling through all of my comments, I think there was something like 50 suggestions for this monster, and I can't believe I've actually not done it up until now. The first suggestion for this monster came from Bendik Ardal, or Ardal, who really wanted to see and hear me talk about shadows. So I hope I can do justice to this really weird and creepy undead creature, but there's only one way to find out. So let's get started with today's video. Shadows, in terms of the D&D creature, have been a part of our game world since 1977's Monster Manual, released for 1st edition, where they appeared as hulking, spined silhouettes with 3 clawed fingers on each hand. Since then, they've taken on a more of a kind of slim, maybe manta ray-like form, somewhere between the silhouette that Batman and the Slender Man might cast if they had a baby together. God, what an image. They're sentient, hungering, tangible ghosts, or at least ghostly undead. Basically, if you imagine Dementors from Harry Potter, then you've got a great mental picture for these baleful monsters. They're likely inspired from all sorts of folklore and mythology throughout human history that can trace their roots back to the phenomenon of sleep paralysis. Now, I've mentioned this phenomenon a few times on the channel, and its impact on the folklore of humankind throughout the ages, but it's equally fascinating and terrifying, so I hope you won't mind if I talk about it a little bit more. My wife actually suffers from a version of this phenomenon, and it's utterly bizarre and shocking to behold as an outsider, unable to help when someone you love is suffering in a way that you can't interact with. For those unaware, during our sleep cycles, our brains are incredibly active as we dream. And to prevent you from acting out your dreams physically, like going for a jog in the night as you run from Scary Terry in a nightmare, your brain actually recognizes that you are resting and essentially shuts off your body's ability to move, or at least move in a capacity that would be like going for a jog. In sleepwalkers, a disruption of this sleep mechanic means that they do try and act out their dreams. But in the case of sleep paralysis, the reverse is true. A person essentially wakes up and opens their eyes, their mind is still creating dreamlike imagery, but the signal to their body to be able to move and speak as they wake up is cut off. So they've essentially become trapped or frozen in a waking nightmare. As they start to panic because they can't move, and their brain interprets this panic as the fight or flight response, they generate a lot of adrenaline, and in turn this causes their waking dreams to become scarier. Shadows come into this through our brain trying to deal with and interpret its ability to understand depth perception. While you dream, although you're seeing fantastic images through your occipital lobe, essentially your brain's equivalent of a movie theatre that processes visual information, it's clever enough to know that you're not really using your eyes, so they don't actually need to physically focus on anything. So during the day, your eyes, if you have 2 of them, focus on the same things. It sounds simple enough, but it's weirder than you might first think. If you're in a room with someone right now, ask to look at them. Try to look at both of their eyes at the same time. It's hard, right? You can make the illusion of looking at their eyes by staring at the center between both of them, the bridge of their nose, but both of your eyes want to focus on the same spot. If you visualize in your head a kind of triangle that meets at one point and then diverges into your 2 eyes, that's kind of what's going on. Your two eyes want to focus on one central point, so your vision sort of points together to make a triangle in your vision. So you're never really focused on both of a person's eyes at once. You might flip between them while you talk to them, but you're only ever really looking at one if you're looking them directly in the eye. This triangular vision is how your brain calculates depth, so it knows where an object is in the space of that sort of triangle. It's sort of looking at the object twice from two slightly different angles, so it builds this kind of mental grid, and it could easily pick out where this object is within it. If, for example, you wanted to try and pick up that object. I don't know if you, like I, when I was a kid, did the thing where you focus on something that you're holding in your hand and then close one eye and then close the other one, and it looks like it's kind of shifting slightly from left to right. That's just a different focus between two different eyes. I never really took much stock of this until I was about a teenager, because my dad actually lost vision in one of his eyes, and for a long time he struggled to do things like pouring drinks or shake hands on the first try, because although he could see you perfectly, his brain didn't have this triangle grid of spatial reference called depth perception. Over the years, his brain adapted, and you'd have absolutely no idea that one of his eyes serves no function at all, but it took him many years to kind of work this out for his brain to completely adapt to the process. Because your brain expects there to be a second input so that it can calculate depth. Anyway, this has been a really massive but useful tangent. When someone with sleep paralysis in this waking dream looks at things, their eyes still think that they're in a dream and closed and sleeping, so they point straight forwards. There's no need to focus on any particular point, so they don't make this triangle, they don't have this grid of spatial depth, because there should be nothing to focus on. And what this actually means for someone in sleep paralysis is that there is this gap in the center of their vision that your brain has no idea what to do with. So it accesses the pattern center of the brain and looks for something recognizable, looks for a pattern to fill this gap with, whatever this dark spot in the middle of the night might be. The most recognizable thing for a human to recognize and for your brain to calculate is, well, another human. Babies develop this concept as their first experiment into vision. They actually see silhouettes long before they can recognize anyone's particular features. It's such a fundamental and basic part of human understanding and vision. So your brain tells you that there's a human made up of darkness standing at the end of your bedroom. And your brain goes, "Oh my God, what the hell is that? No one is supposed to be here. I'm at my most vulnerable. I'm asleep. And also, I can't move. I want to run away, but my body is frozen." So your adrenaline surges. Your occipital lobe interprets this as a nightmare, and a shadow person begins to move and essentially haunt you. What a terrifying position to be in. Now, imagine if all of that was a real creature. Rather than hallucinating it, a shadow person was really there, in your room, waiting for you. Yep, kill it with fire, right? That is a D&D shadow. Shadows in D&D are parasitic. They like to drain the hope, positivity, and kindness from a person. Very like a Dementor's Kiss, which is manifested in-game as an attack called Strength Drain, where they draw 2d6 plus 2 points of health from a target, and reduces their strength by 1d4, drinking their energy, their soul, their will to fight. And if that attack, or any subsequent strength drains like this, reduces someone's strength to 0, they instantly die with no life or death saving throws. Absolutely nothing. Following this, the empty, joyless soul from this body rises up as a new shadow, 1d4 hours later, drawn to try and rekindle its joy by draining happiness from others. But you know what's really rekindled my happiness? My patrons over on Patreon. Every month they help to let me make videos like this that you're watching right now by being generous enough to back me financially, whether that's $1 a month all the way up to the very, very highest levels. And I like to reward them for doing that as well. And that can take the form of a shout out on all of my social media. You might have noticed at the end of my videos, some of these names are added to the credits at the end of my video section. A lot of them also get a copy of every single illustration that I do each month, including this one. And there are also things like live one-on-one chats, where we can talk through character creation, I can do some drawing for you, or just chill out and talk. But importantly, they also get more control over these videos, because they help me to make them. The way Monster Mondays work is that I take all of your suggestions that you leave me down in the comment section below. So just a reminder, if you do have a monster that you'd like to see me draw or hear me talk about, make sure to leave a little comment and pop that in there. Then I bundle up all of your suggestions into what I call my to-draw list, and I let my patrons, no matter what level they back me at, whether they're backing me at $1 or several per month, they'll get an equal vote on which ones of those monsters that you've suggested that they'd like to see next. And I pick their top 4, the top 4 that they vote for. And that's how I determine which videos I do next. So if that sounds appealing to you and you'd like a bit more control over the types of videos that you see from me, if you'd like to vote on these monsters every single month, hopefully one of your favourites can turn up sooner, and you'd like to help me make these videos every single week for you, then I'd really appreciate your support. And to that end, I'll leave a little link down in my description box where you can find my Patreon page so you can join our community and help me to make these videos, because it's only with your support that I get to do this fantastic, fantastic job. So thank you very much, if that's something you choose to look at. Unlike my wonderful patrons, however, shadows have no memory of the life that they were spawned from. They're a totally new entity, like a zombie, I guess. All they know is the hungry, morose void that they were born with, a desperate need to fill that hole by stealing somebody else's happiness. Now, in a fascinating move, this part of someone's soul is removed forever, so even if someone is killed by this strength drain technique and a new shadow is born, and then this person is resurrected from death by a healer or a cleric or something like that, the reborn person will cast no shadow. Then they will actually be more of a positive person, because this moroseness, this sadness is gone from them. Shadows are most drawn to good aligned characters, their rationale being that they are most likely to be joyful, but also that they'll push all of their temptations and bad habits and dark impulses into the darkness, according to the monster manual, where they hang like a lure for hungry shadows desperate for a meal. Now, I tried something totally different for my illustration here. Usually I am very, very focused on my line work, but there was a lot of call in my comments to make something more intangible, and I really wanted to make this kind of aggressive silhouette look for the shadow. So I tried out a few things. I wanted to make it sort of like a blurry, gaunt, undead looking silhouette, and I'm not honestly sure how I feel about this one. I don't feel like it's one of my very, very best pieces, but I'm glad that I tried something new. And as an artist, sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles. You try something new, and it can be different, but because it's not your normal style, it may not be something that you're great at yet. Either way, I enjoyed having the opportunity to try something different, so thank you so much for joining me as I drew this one today. Another interesting fact about shadows, just before I leave, is that these things are tangible. They look ghost-like, but there's nothing saying that you can't just punch these things. So feel free to get stab happy if you want to avoid a Dementor's kiss. Make sure to like this video, favorite it, and share it with your friends if you think you're going to be dealing with shadows soon. And subscribe as well, because I release more videos like this every single week. If you're good aligned, make sure to keep your vices and your idiosyncrasies out in the open as well. Try not to hide who you are, because you might be casting a devious lure for shadows. And until next time, happy monster hunting.